Everyone could please find their seats. Before we begin, I'd like to ask the following people to come forward to help us to bring the Aron to the door in the back. Jeffrey Silverman, Benscher Steiner, Rabbi David Becker, Chaim Peretz, Mark Magid, Yitzchak Flackman, and Bezi Gross.
Because they said that we took out a whole separate one. It's not proper to say like on Shabbos or something like that.
The whole thing. The whole thing.
You start recording it? Yep. That's all we're gonna send it out. Like a bunch of people know send it out.
That's the children, right? That's the children with the line. So I got another sheet to send this straight up. Go ahead.
Oh, I think I'll call it.
Let me ask you.
This is my father's headset.
I'd like to ask Rabbi Top, the Mordasser of Beth Jacob Beverly Hills, please come forward and say something to him. Maybe see.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagur be'alecha, mi yishkon behar kadshecha, holech tamim v'chol tzedek v'dover emes b'ulvavo, lo ragal l'shono lo asal l'rei ura v'cherpa lo nasal krovo, nivzeh be'inav nemas v'sirei Adonai yichabed, nishpa lo harav v'lo yamir kaspo lo nasan b'neshech v'shochad al naki lo lakach, ose ele lo yimot liyonah.
I'd like to ask Rabbi Dunner, the Mordasser of Young Israel in North Beverly Hills, please come forward and say a kapitel to him.
אשרי האיש אשר לא הלך בעצת רשעים, מזמור לדוד אדוני מי יגור באוהלך מי ישכון בהר קודשך. הולך תמים ופעל צדק ודובר אמס בלבבו. לרגל על שוינו לעשה לרעי רעה וחרפה לנוסע על קרובו. נבזה בין אבנים אס וסירי אדוני יכבד, נשבע להוריו לא יאמר כספוי ולנשן ונשך ושויחד על נוקי לא ילקח עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם.
I'd like to ask Rabbi Summers, Mardas, Rav Anshe Emes to please come forward to say a few words. Leila Nishmas Avram Tzvi Ben Shmuel.
I have to ask Mechila from Mr. Benscher for many things, but in particular that I hate to admit it, but I'm really not prepared tonight because of things that were going on last few days with me. But I just found out 5 to 8 that the Levaya was tonight. I felt I had to come. Because we're not just mourning being Misa'avel over a very special person, which is true. Mr. Benscher was a very, very special person. But we're also, I think, being Misa'avel over a generation. And a particular Hanchaga. That is, Mr. Benscher was a Yaakov in every sense of the word. And you don't find those too much anymore, a real Yaakov. And I remember very clearly, we have various levels, people involved in shuls, as Rabbi Top, Rabbi Dunner, Rabbi Kupfer, everybody knows that, to run an organization, Rabbi Shafa, to run an organization, you need a lot of people pitching in. And of course, in the shul we have an e-gabbai. We have a gabbai who sends out the email and updates things. So Baruch Hashem, we're zocha to have Shua Richards, who genetically is not a Yaakov, but really is. Anybody who knows Shua, he's medactic, every little thing. So a while ago, maybe about a year or two ago, it was unusual that Shua made a mistake on the emissaries. The emissary of sound. It was I don't remember what the mistake was, but I remember it was a really minor mistake. I didn't catch it. Mr. Benscher caught it. Mr. Benscher caught it. And he went over to Shua and gave him what my sister would call a Misha Berach. He let him have it. He said, you made a mistake. You made a mistake. So, we would say, it's a real thing. Hope Shua doesn't mind me repeating this story. So then Mr. Benscher said an amazing thing. He said, you don't understand. You represent the Kehillah. You represent the Kehillah. When you send that out, you represent the shul. If there's a mistake, that reflects on the shul. There's a mistake. How can you do that? That hit me so hard. He had an appreciation what a Kehillah means. What representing a Kehillah means. The guy sends out the email, so it always, and like I said, I don't remember what the mistake was, but it was a minor mistake, really small. But you represent the Kehillah. How can you do that? That was his sensitivity. That's who Mr. Benscher was. And he felt that about himself. He represented the Yakish world that we've lost touch with. How can you do certain things? It has to be perfect. Well, it's 99 and 4/10, as they used to. Not good enough. And that was his hanhaga with everything in life. But it's deeper than that. I'm sure you're all familiar with the very famous Gemara in Bava Basra, Daf Yud Amud Beis. Yosef was sick, very sick. And I don't know, on one level, it seems like he died, but he came back. We call it an out-of-body experience. So his father asked him, what did you see? So you probably know the Gemara says, Yosef said, I saw an olam hapukla, I saw an upside down world. People are on the bottom or on the top are on the bottom. And there's many very different pshatim about this Gemara. Moshe Feinstein has an amazing pshat on this. But, just simple pshat in the Gemara is, sometimes there's people who seem to be little in this world, but they do gigantic things. They do amazing things. And sometimes those things are not seen, or appreciated, or even known of. That was Mr. Benscher. Those of us who grew up in Los Angeles, such as myself, Rabbi Geiger, we know what Los Angeles used to be. There were amazing people who lived in Los Angeles, but the community was small. The front community was small. I was telling somebody recently, when I was growing up, if there was someone Shomer Shabbos, you knew them. You knew them. There weren't so many. That doesn't mean there weren't great people. That doesn't mean there were, but it was a little different than it was now. It was restaurants on Pico, they weren't there. I say very often, in sixth grade we found out, Rabbi Grumman said that Bell brand potato chips were not kosher. So for 6 years, I went without a potato chip. No kosher potato chips. Would you imagine such a thing? I mean, it's like a deprived child. Things were very different. But there were great people who trailblazed Torah in Los Angeles. Torah in Los Angeles, which no one thought would succeed. In Hollywood? Impossible. But we know of some of them, and we don't know of others. All of us know of Rav Simcha Wasserman, Zeichatz Chaim Baruch, who worked tirelessly, Umana Torah, and planted Torah. Olam HaFucha. People look at him, he didn't have a big yeshiva, he struggled, it was difficult. In our society, we would say he wasn't a success. But Rav Simcha was very successful. In the hindsight of history, he trailblazed Torah as we know it today in Los Angeles. One of the people. Of course, there were many others. But what some people don't know, it should be written in the annals of history of from Los Angeles, which hopefully somebody will write, is that when Simcha came, it was very difficult. The milieu was very different. People didn't believe in Torah in the classic way, true Torah. But finally, Rav Simcha started getting somewhere. He had to buy a building. He had to get a building. How is he going to get a building? You need money. Any true Torah institution knows you don't have money. You never have money. I was speaking to a local Marvis Torah recently. He said, we're financially. I said, that's good. It's good. That means you're doing the right thing. But Simcha certainly didn't have any money. Mr. Benscher worked at City National Bank. And somehow he and Rav Simcha got in touch with each other. Rav Simcha needed money. He had no collateral, he had no backers, he had nothing. Mr. Benscher went to the head of the bank and said, you have to lend this rabbi money. You have to lend him money. No. What does he have? He has nothing. Mr. Benscher convinced the bank to lend him the money. Mr. Benscher put his own name and everything backing Rav Simcha so that Rav Simcha would have his yeshiva and start planting Torah in Los Angeles. The fact that we're all here today and Torah is flourishing has a great deal to do with Rav Simcha. Rav Simcha wouldn't have had it start, again, but Mr. Benscher was the shaliach. He was the shaliach. He was the one who was chosen by Hashem to be the shaliach to help Rav Simcha start the yeshiva. And then the Olam HaEmes, that is noted. And this little man, Mr. Benscher, we all knew and loved, you could see the crowd, in the Olam HaEmes, I guarantee you, it's Gemara. He's Albionian. He's up there. Because all the Torah that's flourishing in Los Angeles is on his ledger. There's a great deal on his ledger. So, again, I'm sure I'm speaking for many of us that I have to ask Mechila for Mr. Benscher, not appreciating as much that a very special, unique person he was. The world that he represented, the dedication that he had, the love of Torah that he had, that he put everything on the line for Torah. And for that we thank him. And we'll miss him. And we'll always cherish him. And Mir Hashem will be reunited with him. The Bias Kol said it. And Malcha Hashem Elokim Timon El Kotanim, from all of us and all Klal Yisrael.
I'd like to ask Rabbi Davidi Benscher, the son of Mr. Benscher, to come forward.
I'd first like to acknowledge all the Rabbanim from the community that are here, made it their business to be here, to be part of the special evening. I'd like to acknowledge Talia and Jonathan Abrams and Diane Abrams, an old schoolmate of mine. He was a few years older, but I'm so zeicha to have him here with us. And he knew Abba, Avi Murray, Avram Tzvi Ben Shmuel. And I don't think anything that I could really say would do justice to my father. Was a bigger-than-life person. Whoever the opportunity to know him and meet him and spend some time with him knew that he was it was very special. He had a big heart, and he was able to connect with Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbanim, regular people, children, small children. How many kids out there know him as Saba Tzvi? And they would all run to him when they saw him in shul, whenever they saw him. And with the patir of my father, it's really a big loss for us all. His name was Avram Tzvi. Kishmo Kainhu. Like our forefather, Avram, he was a maverick, unapologetically an unapologetical individual, and very, very unique. In the eyes of a teenager trying to fit in, this was often a hard message. But as an adult, we came to appreciate his strength, appreciate the strength of his personality in this very special way. Another way Abba was Avram was like Avram Avinu in the way he connected to people. He had a way of really seeing you. He would ask you your name and then repeat it often, singing it, adding animation and pizzazz. Like Avram, Abba made friends with all that he encountered, especially his friends here in LA, who are all a testament to this. His second name was Tzvi. Tzvi in English is a gazelle. A gazelle is known to be graceful and swift, constantly on the move, elusive and beautiful in all of its delicate steps. Abba's spirit was never happy with a full routine. He loved change, excitement, and adventure. And he passed on that love of travel to many of his children, including me. We've been getting messages from all over the world, including obviously Los Angeles, London, Israel, people who are distraught of the news of his patira. This is because Abba touched so many. He had this incredible ability to connect with people. He was very sensitive and appreciated beauty. He saw the beauty in people. He loved beautiful places. He loved traveling and enjoying beautiful, breathtaking vistas. And also saw beauty in his music that was with him throughout his life. Whenever we visited, he was either completely engrossed in classical music. He was very fond of Vivaldi. He was playing his flute or Casio, or just singing. His love of music was with him till the very end, when lovely community members played for him and brought him some comfort. He also loved to produce beautiful things. He painted shells. All of his grandchildren have the special shells that he sat with them, he painted together. And he also had paintings that he loved drawing and admiring. I said to him, Abba, you moved to Reykjavik. He says, what do you mean Reykjavik? I said, well, you lived in New York. Instead of going 5 hours one way, you went 5 hours in the other direction. And he said, what do you mean? I said, we want to see you. We have to see you. We have to get on a plane and fly out. He said, nah, it's okay. You'll come. And he came back over the last 16 years since my mother was nifter. He came back. We saw him for some small periods, extended periods. He never missed a bar mitzvah. He never missed a wedding. He was always there for the family. But he was a spirited soul that was constantly on the move, and he was looking and searching. Keeping that in mind, we have to realize, first of all, that he celebrated, his birthday was perhaps one of the greatest, the day of his birth was the greatest day and event of the 20th century. He was born on January 30th, 1933. That is in Hamburg, Germany. That's the same day that the Chancellor Hitler came to power. And with that on his passport and wherever he traveled extensively, people always looked at him twice when they looked at his passport. And that's the start of Mr. Jerry Benscher. A lot of people are not aware of the fact that when he was about 5.5 years old, there was a minor tragedy in the family in that he was terribly burnt. So much so that for 1.5 years he was in hospital. Part of the time in Hamburg, and as the dark clouds of the war were approaching, and everyone had to leave, there was desperation. Everyone had to. First, his father had left, and as he was lying in hospital, his treatments, he had 3rd-degree burns over 2/3 of his body. The doctors and nurses urged his mother, you have to leave him here. Probably won't survive. If he does survive, he'll probably be a paraplegic. He's going to get blood poisoning. He'll never be able to have children. He won't have a normal life. You have to leave Hamburg. You must leave immediately. The men were already gathered. His father had already run away to Italy and on his way to Palestine, and the mother had to leave. So she wouldn't leave him. To her credit, she wouldn't leave him. She's not leaving without my son, without having arrangements for him. So he was transported from Hamburg to London when there still was a connection between the countries. And he remembers the transport as a little kid. There were like nuns and nurses on the plane. My brother says that it was a private plane, that he was shipped to London. In London was his grandfather and his aunts and uncles. And they accepted him there. And they took him immediately to continue his stint in the hospital burn unit in London. So keeping that in mind, we're dealing with a 5.5-year-old kid that spoke no English. His only language was German. And there he was in a foreign country, not speaking the language, not having his parents. And there he was for quite a few months until he was able to get better somewhat, to be released. He was released. His grandfather took him in. And they were looking for a couple to take him to Palestine. His parents had already made it over to Palestine. And so he was kind of stuck for quite some time in London. Finally, they found a couple that found a safe route, and finally he was reunited. It was about 1.5 to 2 years till he saw his parents. And this is the background of Mr. Benscher. So when we met him, when anybody were to meet him and see, the bigger than life personality and how positive he was in life, people don't realize that the background that he went through in his youth, and even later in life, the burns had affected. He had to have some operations that affected him his whole life, but you would never be able to tell. He was this very strong, bigger than life person, and whatever I say about him is probably very just unjust and unfair, because he was a very special, unusual individual that was able to connect with everyone. My father always looked back on his life. Whenever I spoke with him, we had many conversations. Thank God I had the opportunity to come to Los Angeles at least 3-4 times a year, especially the last few years when he couldn't travel. And we'd sit and talk, and he always, about the fact that he always looked back on his life and he wondered, why did Hashem send him to Los Angeles? Why did Hashem send him to London? What was he doing in London? Why New York? What were the reasons? Why? He always wanted to find sense and reason why he was put in a certain place. And he reflected. I guess he came to Los Angeles. Rabbi Summers mentioned he had a very close relationship with Rabbi Simcha Wasserman, and he had helped him with his very difficult loan, and he put his career on the line to be able to raise funds for the yeshiva, which is going today. Today it's a very strong yeshiva. It's called Orel Chanan Lubavitch. I think Lubavitch took it over, and it's a vibrant yeshiva with hundreds of Bachrim. And this all started from him able to help him raise funds for this yeshiva. And by the first annual banquet, Rabbi Wasserman got up, and my father wasn't prepared. He got up and said, "Without one person here sitting here today, we wouldn't be sitting here today and have this yeshiva that we have." And we have to thank Mr. Jeremy Benscher, and he got a rounding applause, and he said he wasn't so shocked, he wasn't expecting it. But he felt that's one of the main reasons why he came to LA. He also, when he started a minyan together with a bunch of nice young couples, talking in the 60s, the minyan was called the Younger Light. There was a lot of couples there that really didn't have close family, and they were each other's family. And I know my mother was involved in the Nashe there, and my father was the Gaba for many, many years in that shul. They had wonderful experiences and memories. I was once driving home from Manhattan to Brooklyn, and where I was living, and there was a Hasidic person standing by the Midtown Tunnel. So I pulled over. I said, "You need a ride?" He says, "Yeah, I'm going to Borough Park, wherever it was in Brooklyn." So he gets in the car, Hasidic dressed fellow, and I say, "What is your name?" Shalom Aleichem, "What is your name?" And he said, "My name is Benscher." Benscher. "You related to Benscher, Los Angeles?" I'm like, "How do you?" "Yes, my parents live there." And this gentleman was maybe a few years older than me. He says, "How do you know Benscher, Los Angeles?" He says, "What do you mean Benscher, Los Angeles? Your father was the Gabba of the shul. You know what an impression that it made to everyone that there was a from person working in a bank, and he was Shomer Shabbos, and he had such an influence on everyone that he was like an inspiration." I said, "But you're a Hasidic guy." He said, "So what?" So I grew up Hasidic, but it was amazing. Like Rabbi Summers said, Los Angeles in the 60s, there wasn't like a kosher butcher. My parents got together with a whole bunch of people, and they ordered meat from Denver. They put it on a truck, and they mailed the key. The truck arrived, and they had the key, and they opened up the truck. And that's how they had meat. It was a totally different world. And these memories that my father had of Los Angeles, I guess is what, like I said to him, Abba, all roads lead to LA. He always came back. It always brought him back. Tremendous feelings. He came here after they got married in New York, my parents. They had Sheva Brachas. Shlomo Karlebach walked in with his guitar because my father's mother was from Leipzig. Shlomo Karlebach was from Leipzig. Shlomo Karlebach's father was the Rav of the community there, and he knew the family. So he came in, it was like old friends. And right after Sheva Brachas, they moved to LA, and they had such wonderful wonderful, warm experiences. So he felt that that's one of that was the reason he came to LA, start his family here, and to help the Rosh Hashiva of Simcha Wasserman, and to be involved in the shul. And that's how he felt. That's why he was here. How did he end up in London? Well, they felt, perhaps, looking back, maybe it wasn't the right move, but they felt that there was more family there, and his brother Gavriel, his younger brother, he adored his brother, urged him to come and join him at work there. And for whatever reason, they picked up and they moved to London. It's like incredible. Who moves from Los Angeles to London? It's just like an incredible, like, if we look at the family pictures and videos in Los Angeles, there's sunshine and palm trees and everybody's happy and dancing. And then the pictures from London is like cold and dreary and dark skies, and like it's just like a totally different experience. But we lived there. He felt that he came to London so his kids could have a good education, special education that we did have, and we had wonderful friends. And maybe they weren't so happy there, but his children were happy, and Ari was born there, and that's why he felt. There was also his brother had passed away at a young age, and he felt that it was his responsibility to urge his son, my cousin Julian, to go to shul and say Kaddish, and he urged him a lot. He used to get up early, and it's a different neighborhood. We lived in Golders Green. It was Hampstead. He used to go pick him up and take him to shul, and he felt that that's one of the reasons why he was in London, to make sure that Kaddish was properly said. Those were the reasons that he had in his mind that he was in London. And of course, he came back to New York to marry off his children and to see grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I mean, that was he felt that his purpose was in New York. In New York, he had a tremendous relationship with the Tenker Rav. Tenker Rav was an old-time Hasidic Rav who spoke only Yiddish, and my father did not speak Yiddish, he spoke German. And they had this wonderful, they loved each other. He would trek his shul wasn't so close, he trekked in the snow and the rain to daven by the Tenker Rav, and they had this very, very special, unique relationship, the two of them. They admired each other tremendously. And that's the reason why I was in New York. And that's with the family, and to see the children established. And then after my mother passed away about 16 years ago, he started the itch, and he started traveling and going, and we never could keep up with him. He knew every Chabad house all over the Midwest and Florida. I'd say, Abba, where are you? He says, I'm on a cruise on the Eastern Caribbean. I'm like, where? No, don't worry. He was always like happy, and I think that's one of the ways how he dealt with the fact that my mother wasn't around. And since his whole life, since he was a kid, and we missed out that when he was smaller, when he was younger, he grew up in Israel, after he made it to Palestine, and then when he finished high school, he went to London, then he went back to Israel, then he went to America, and he went back he was always traveling on the move. Not only that, but when we did live in London, I mean, I'm a company that I worked for, I'm like the national sales manager. When we lived in London, he was the international sales manager of his brother's business. So he was in Paris and Malta and Athens and all kind of different places. He was constantly traveling. So after about the last 16 years, he's been on the road, traveling, and as I said, all roads lead to Los Angeles, because whatever happened, he always ended up back in LA, and that's basically, in a very small nutshell, big picture of my father, Avraham Tzvi Ben-Shmuel. He was very lucky to meet Eva Becker, who really took care of him and took interest in him, and they became. They became very special friends, and for that we had a lot of Akarsa Tov, and we know we weren't here, and she was, and she kept an eye on him, and more than an eye on him. Words can't express that appreciation that we have, that we know what she did. He knows what she did. Kadosh Baruch Hu knows what she did. It's all. We know. It's all out there, and it's something that we appreciate. And I don't think words alone can express the Akarsa Tov that we have for her. We have tremendous Akarsa Tov to the Los Angeles community and all those wonderful, wonderful people that opened up their homes to him. About 4 or 5 months ago, there was a bar mitzvah. I live in Bet Shemesh. There was the Hamlin family. I'm sure most of you, a lot of you know who they are. They moved to our neighborhood, and they made a bar mitzvah. And me and my wife, we were invited, and they asked me to say a few words. I got up to speak. I said, listen, we never understood why my father, we know he had warm feelings towards LA, but we don't understand why he kept going back to why, what's the truth? But if you spend some times with the Hamlin family, and there were other couples there that had made Aliyah from LA, if you spend time with them, you'd see the warmth and the, let's say, Übergegebenkeit, the givingness and the camaraderie that these people had. Really, I said that you see what the draw was and why you wanted to be close to these people. And all I can say is that all of you in LA here, especially the last bunch of years, I mean, your gain was our loss, and we know that he had good friends, warm friends. People used to come, the singing and the dancing and all the different whatever. He was having a party here. He really enjoyed it. He really enjoyed every minute. We just couldn't believe it. So, I mean, that's where he wanted to be. Gemara tells us in Makkas, "B'derech she'adam rotza leilech bo malichin oso." The way that a person wants to go, so he is taken. And, as you reflect on my father's life, it's a reflection that of total positiveness, even though it started out with a lot of difficulties and a lot of hardship. And we have, as a family, we have incredible, wonderful memories. He was such a great person and inspiration to us all. Didn't have a formal yeshiva education. He did, when he finished high school, he did go to the yishuv, and he was there for some time in Eretz Yisrael, and he was always drawn to Talmidei Chachamim and to Torah and to learning. It was always a special place. He would always love a good vart. I'd call him up and he'd say, "Oh, I just heard a good thought." And he would share with me, and I would share with him something. And it was really, Torah and mitzvahs were paramount in his life. And as he goes now to the Kisei HaKavod, he asked that he should be a Melitz Yosher. I'm sure he's there. He's there hanging out with my mother, Alei Shalom, and his parents, and his beloved brother Gabi. And I know I didn't do justice at all to his life, but all I could say is I wish he gives me mechila. And we loved him a lot. I loved him a lot. And he's not a person to be forgotten quickly, to say the least. And Yehi Zechro Baruch.
I'd like to ask Jeffrey Silverman to come up next to speak, please. My wife and I met Mr. Benscher in the twilight of his years 7 years ago. He sat in that chair, at the end of the row, second row to the back, the end seat. One day I saw him struggling to hold a sitter, so I offered him my plain wooden stender. He appreciated it, and then someone took it from his spot, never to be seen again. We bought him his own stender. The one you see is actually there right now with the silver front, and he asked that his name on the plate be put on it, Zvi Benscher. So he'd always have his place. He left it at his seat year-round. No one sat in his seat, even during the times when he was too ill to come to shul. Then one day he returned after being away for shul for a while, and there was a stranger, a visitor, sitting in his chair. We had no idea this is Mr. Benscher's place. Frail Mr. B, as we called him, Mr. B, came into the shul, and with a billowing voice, he called out with humor, he called out, "I'm not dead yet." He assumed his seat, and the davening continued.
This is but one of the many stories about this incredibly fine man. We have 85 years of stories to share about his love of music, of humor, of family, and of his friends in the community. Whether you addressed him as Mr. B, Saba Tzvi, Jerry, or Abba, few people can claim a lifetime of living where they are genuinely loved by everyone they meet. He was a keen judge of character and could assess an individual by his personal ability just to listen. Mr. B had several jobs in his lifetime. One of them was as a vice president at the bank on Fairfax. It's been mentioned just a few minutes ago. And one of his duties, as you all know, was to approve loans. He gave me a wonderful insight and a very profound and interesting insight into human behavior regarding his time there at the bank. And this is one of the stories he shared with me. Mr. B said that when someone would come into the bank for a loan and they dressed excessively fancy, he was suspicious of that person's character. The idea is that the person is trying to make a grand impression in order to get the loan. Mr. B didn't trust that first impression. He denied the loan to folks for fear that their substance was less substance and more show. However, he approved many loans to folks who dressed simply and modestly. They never defaulted. As a result of this, he was another keen tool of assessment. All the people that Mr. B loaned money to, that he approved, never defaulted. He said to me, always be yourself. Don't try to falsely impress. He also shared that if the applicant talked endlessly, that would be a red flag, because at some point the applicant would unwillingly speak about something that contradicted something else he had said earlier. Mr. B told me, I just let him talk, and I would listen. If they're on the straight and narrow, the applicant spoke little, but expressed substance. Just the opposite was true for the bad risk applicant, who spoke on and on trying to impress. Mr. B would just listen, and that is a great lesson for all of us. It's better to go through life listening a lot and saying much less. Mr. B loved to walk, so losing that piece of his independence was a huge challenge for him. When he lived with his beloved Eva on Worcester, he walked to Beth Jacob and back and forth to learn several times a week. He was independent and stubborn about maintaining it. Eventually, he would agree to rides from friends to get places, but mostly he wanted to walk. In his early 80s, Mr. B walked from Anche to our home near Cadillac and Robertson, which is over a mile away, for Shabbat lunch, only to arrive and tell us that he didn't really eat lunch, but he came for the food. He didn't eat lunch, but he came for the company. And as many people probably know, Mr. B was very picky about food. And although Eva provided him with nutritious meals, Mr. B liked to eat what was delicious to him, and maybe it wasn't the best balanced diet. When he came to visit us during the week, he would listen to his classical music and dine on hot dogs. He often asked us to sneak him his favorite sandwich of white bread with Swiss cheese and cream cheese. He liked the lollipops in the burger bar and was very specific about the ways cheese pizzas had to be made. He loved his coffee, but only the good kind and with milk. One of the things that we had in common was love of music. Some afternoons he would come over to our house and lie down on the bed in our den that looks out to a lovely garden. I would put the music on very loudly. Mr. B would be really happy. And then I would say to him, is it loud enough for you? And sometimes he'd actually say, can you turn it up a bit? On those afternoons, all of the folks up and down our block got a concert of Vivaldi, Mozart, or Mendelssohn, or one of his favorite pieces, which was the Rodrigo Concerto for guitar. And if he heard music he didn't like, he would turn to me and he'd say, what is this? There's no melody. It's nothing. He had very strong opinions about music. One of the most beautiful things I heard Mr. B say was about his marriage. He told me that his wife was very tough. For example, years early in Brooklyn, when his wife was still alive, he'd be listening to music in the apartment very loudly. And at some point, his wife would walk into the living room and abruptly shut off the music and say, "That's enough already." So then I asked Mr. B, "What did you say?" I said, "Okay." He said his wife was a strong person and he liked that. And he figured, if he he said something so beautiful, so mature, that all of his guys who maybe not so mature, this is the beautiful thing he said. He said,